right here. You ain't going nowhere. Well, your ass got some change. You ain't tell me that's the big fella. Hey, why don't you ball at the 5, 3rd down and 2. That was bad. Let's go have some fun, bro. We ain't got to talk about too much. He wants to play the ball. It's holding. What? How is that not called? That ain't gonna call a damn thing. What is the delay for? He's standing right there. He's taking a card out. He's a piece of paper. It's that close? Dear Lord.
Hello and welcome. We are the Aussie Guys. I'm AJ and I've got Ben Harler here with me today, filling in for G more than adequately, I'm sure.
An impossible task, AJ. We all know that. Yeah, I'll bumble my way through.
We will get there. And of course, it is Thanksgiving. Well, at this point in time, all good Americans are tucked into bed with full tummies, probably aching tummies, rolling around, might be getting up post-Thanksgiving at this stage, early hours of the morning. But, you know, a bit of an ode to Thanksgiving today. And Thanksgiving is a bit of a non-entity to us, I guess. But, yeah, we sort of have come up with a sort of semi-Thanksgiving themed week. But how's your week been, Ben?
Yeah, good. I mean, you know, I tried to look around and book a table this morning to watch some football in Melbourne with, you know, a nice Thanksgiving menu. 0 options in the sun to do that. So I don't know. Someone's missing a trick because I'm sure there'll be a few people who would. But yeah, a bit disappointing. But apart from that, yeah, it's been a good week. It's been hot in Melbourne this week, and summer's around the corner, which is a nice feeling after all the lockdown. So, yeah.
Yeah, certainly warm today. Certainly very warm today. I said to you just before I hit record is I've only really been home for maybe 20 minutes. So both my daughters had sort of invites to various pools, various friends' pools. We don't have a pool. It's something which is happening. We've been under constant pressure. You might encounter that pressure as your little ones grow up.
Yeah, we're on trampoline at the minute. Trampoline is
very good.
And then I think pool will be next, I imagine, after that.
Yeah, we've done that. Yeah, trampoline. And so the next one is the pool. And I think the mistake you could make is waiting too late because, like, our daughters are 13 and 9. And a pool right now, they'll get a lot of use out of it. But if we wait too many more years, then maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, with global warming, it's probably going to get a lot of use.
For sure.
So wait for those 40-degree days in the middle of June.
Yeah. Man, oh, man. Like 22 for a pasty white Englishman is far and away hot enough. So, yeah, days like today are a little bit tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Drinks of the pod. I don't know, we haven't really sort of highlighted drinks of the pod recently. I don't know if you've come prepared, but it's a Friday. I've got a G&T on hand. G would be proud of me. I'm rocking I promise you I'm not going to drink this whole bottle, but I'm rocking the 4 Pillars gin, which is very nice. I've only recently discovered gin, I must say. Wasn't previously really into gin.
It's a bit of a fad in England. I think there's lots of gin bars, specific gin bars. And, you know, you can get everything from, you know, what is it, like the slow gin to, I imagine, cotton candy gin or something like that nowadays. Like it's ridiculous. But
my wife bought one, which is.
I went for the local. So this is Brick Lane Pale Ale. So it's just in.
Very nice.
Dandenong. So yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, no, there's lots of different flavors. I mean, I'm discovering. And certainly I think you can tell once you start drinking gin, you can tell the difference between a cheap gin and an expensive gin. That's not too difficult.
Usually you find out the next morning, don't you?
Yes, well, that's right. But for today's pod, So we're looking at week 12. I think you're going to talk a little bit about the Thanksgiving games such as they were before we get into it. But for week 12, we came up with 12 big questions. Originally, my idea, which I must confess is a little bit boring, but I did think, oh, what are we thankful for? It's Thanksgiving. It's like, ugh, that's a bit that's a bit stale. But what about just 12 big questions? Yeah.
For those guys.
That's right. 12 big questions for week 12. Hey, Ganley, how you doing? Yeah, G has got, he's ditched us. He's got better things to do. I don't know where he is. But, yep, he's not present, but we'll be the better for it. Well, who knows? Look, he always brings these A game.
Certain late night establishments have reopened, haven't they, AJ? So who knows? We might have wandered into.
Yeah, well, that's possible. Yes, yeah. No more comment probably needed on that front. Yeah, so we came up with 12 big questions for week 12. That comes sort of dangerously close to my 12 days of Christmas. But anyway, that'll be a whole different ball game. That's immensely popular. I usually get, 3 or 4 people looking forward to that.
Yeah,
my vaunted 12 days of Christmas.
It's a warm up. They're getting like the rub of the lantern here, I think.
Exactly. But listen, before we do that, why don't we talk about the games that were on offer? And you know what? If you were in the States and you had your big, it must be. Mind you, when we have Christmas Day, if there were football games on offer, there probably would be on in the background, I suppose. Family things do get a bit, boring. And it's when you don't have if you had that, maybe there'd be less fights, actually, if there'd be some sort of distraction. But I think a US Thanksgiving would be brilliant. Have the football on, watch 3 games, have 3 games on in the background or whatever, back to back. But the pity of it all was, of course, the Ravens game being delayed, because that by far would have been the best matchup of the 3, because they were lousy matchups in retrospect.
And it was also the signature Thursday night football game anyway. It was the 8:15 slot in the US, so that was the kind of centerpiece, really. So yeah, very disappointing that wasn't on today. And certainly when I set the alarm at 4:25 to get up to watch the Lions and the Texans, I did question my mental state at that point.
I was going to say, did you do that without just a little bit of vomit just coming up and just Lions and oh my God, and Texans.
I'm glad I didn't need to justify it to anybody. If I had to justify it to anyone, I would be in trouble, I think.
Mind you, fantasy makes you do very strange things.
Yeah.
And you watch games you never normally would.
Which I think is the beauty of it, though, as well, isn't it? It's today even, watching that Texans-Lions game, the first half was just a riot. Like, it was such a good watch, like, for all the bad reasons, of course.
Yeah.
The football, but it woke me up, I'll tell you that, which was good. Like you find things, don't you? You sort of see the games differently, I think, when you're not invested too much from a.
Oh yeah. Oh look, there's a lot of truth to that. I've got to say that being a Charger fan for probably 30 years now, a good proportion of that time, I was just a Chargers fan. And I didn't really, if you had asked me who was on the Lions roster, I probably couldn't have told you.
Yeah.
Apart from maybe the key players, key players. And what you usually do as a fan of any club, what you usually do if you're not into fantasy is you kind of look at the matchup. Oh, the Chargers are playing the Bills, right? So look, who are the key players? Oh, wow. They've got, an interesting, Josh Allen. You obviously you know Josh Allen, but like, you'd sort of go, Tremaine Edmonds. Wow, he's a good linebacker. Oh, that's interesting. So you kind of weren't sort of drilling down that deep.
No, not at all. and I think for us in here as well, it provides that opportunity, I think, to go, like you say, 3 games back to back or whatever it is, and just indulge for a bit, which is, we don't often get a chance to do that here because of the times, right? So
no,
yeah, it's good.
It is
do you
good.
want me to give you the speed fire rundown of today's games then?
Yeah, please do. Ganley, it doesn't surprise me that you've been to some Thanksgivings, and yeah, I imagine it is a fantastic day, overall, and having the games on and everything is great. Matt, how you going? Yeah, Ben, give us a rundown. So Texans Lions.
So quite an eventful game in this one. I think for me, the first thing you notice straight from the off, like literally on the first drive, you had Stafford to Hockenson, 2 catches for 61 yards on the first drive. So that's if you've got him and your tight end this week, that's already a good start. Clearly, what was always going to happen was a 1-yard TD run from Adrian Peterson, which is generally all he's done this year. So that put the Lions up pretty early. Then on the next drive, there was literally two touchdowns in a minute 40. First of all, the Texans went 3 and out, but then the Lions, basically Stafford at the line of scrimmage, picked by JJ Watt, which was Thanksgiving. Let's get JJ Watt in a bit of action. That was nice to see, and he was loving it for his pick 6. And then on the literally on the kickoff, the first play, they didn't put Ty Williams. They didn't put AP in. They didn't put Kerryon Johnson in. Of course, they put Ty Williams in, who fumbled straight away. And the basically CJ Procise, another absolute nobody who you don't want to watch on Thanksgiving, scores the touchdown reception that helps nobody. And then back-to-back plays after that, with Kerryon Johnson fumbles, and then on the next play, CJ Procise fumbles, which results in another 1-yard touchdown from Adrian Peterson. So you've basically got all that happening, and it's not even the second quarter. Then really an amazing play. Deshaun Watson hands the ball off to Duke Johnson, who looks to be going nowhere on a running play, and turns around, throws the ball backwards to Deshaun Watson, who then finds the receiver in the end zone, and it's a touchdown. It was quite amazing to see, really, that kind of play. And that was 34 points on the board with still 10 minutes left in the second quarter. So it was just an absolute. It was hard to describe what it was, really. It was, like you say, it was entertaining, but it was 2 very bad football teams, showing how bad they were, I think, at that point. The second half was less entertaining, and Deshaun Watson did kind of, take hold of the game and show his class. And for those that love their best ball, they'll be happy to see Will Fuller popping up with 2 second-half touchdowns, one for 34 yards, and another for 40 yards. So nice fantasy day for Deshaun Watson and Will Fuller as the Texans run out 41-25 winners. And post Bill O'Brien, they're a decent team.
Yeah, fancy that. Never mind best ball. I think Will Fuller's a full-time starter. Yeah, I've got him in several. Contrary to what you'd think. And yeah, he looked great. He looked fantastic. And but he can be hit and miss, hence the best ball. But yeah. No, I didn't watch the first half. I did watch the second half, and yeah, I sort of had the same sort of meh kind of impression. Matt's saying here, at one stage the Lions ran 9 straight times and looked unstoppable, then got to the goal line and 3 times for nada. Look, DeAndre Swift, it's fair to say, looks fantastic. and they could have done with him today.
Yeah.
He definitely looks like the find. He could be the find. Oh, no, the find. He could be the best running back in this running back class.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And what's mystified, I think, everybody over the course of the season so far is that I think last week he probably had his best game as a Lion, and it took so long for that to happen. Like, why are people like AP and Kerryon Johnson and Ty Williams and all those guys getting touches? Like, wow. But, I mean, they were also without their first-round draft pick, Jeff Okudah, who's also looked really good.
Yes.
Despite the Lions, many, many faults. But it really, Kenny Golladay was out as well, so it was really tough. And I know Matt Stafford's got a bit of a dodgy thumb, but it's really yet another lost season for the Lions, and yet a season under Matt Patricia. So
I think you might have a question related to that, or someone gave us a question related to that later on. So maybe we won't spend too much time on it. We can revisit it, but definitely, it's probably easy to see the question around that you would write a question about the current Detroit Lions. What would I write? Okay, what about game 2?
So we have the Washington football team going to Arlington to take on the Cowboys. Pretty uneventful and boring first half. Was lit up by a 54-yard touchdown, Andy Dalton to Amari Cooper, which popped the Dallas Cowboys ahead there going into the second quarter. And then, there was a really interesting play sort of with about a minute 56 left on the clock before halftime. The Cowboys have a 4th and 1 at their own 34-yard line. You have Zeke Elliott and you have Tony Pollard, who, arguably maybe outside of, Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison or Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are probably the best 1-2 punch around, you could argue. So what do? They call a passing play to CeeDee Lamb that goes incomplete, and they turn the ball over on downs, at a point where it's a tied ball game, and there's only a few minutes left of the half. That, of course, leads to a Logan Thomas touchdown. And Logan Thomas did a bit of everything today. He
did.
Rushed, he received, he threw a beautiful 28-yard pass down the sideline to Scary Terry. And, he also caught a touchdown. The second half was an absolute disaster for the Cowboys.
You're talking about the fake punt?
First of all, the second play of the second half, Zeke Elliott fumbles the ball for a 5th time this season. 5 times this season, he'd fumbled the ball 5 times in his previous 4 years. So, that tells you the kind of season he's having. We then have, the fake punt, which goes absolutely nowhere. Again, they fake punted while in their own half. At this time, just trailing, 20-16. So it's still a tight game. They fake punt from their own 24-yard line. It goes absolutely nowhere. And let's talk about him, shall we? Antonio Gibson rooted in on the very next play for the second of 3 touchdowns on the day. An absolute sensational performance from the 3rd round rookie. And we were just talking about DeAndre Swift, but you have to talk about Antonio Gibson. I mean, it's we talked about this last time about the offensive rookie of the year, and how really it should be maybe a quarterback and then maybe a position player. I think he would have popped himself into the conversation if that was the case after last night. He's been fantastic this season.
And, in all honesty, and I'm not making this up, before this round, this week, I had a couple of little attempts at getting Antonio Gibson, and it takes, obviously you have to pay, right? you have to pay right now to get Antonio Gibson. I wasn't successful, but after this week, forget it. The price just doubled because far out. I had a feeling. I just had a feeling based on what we'd seen already, which has already been impressive. Yeah. I just thought, could be a good buy opportunity. Well, not opportunity. You're buying high, but I just felt like we might be going higher, and lo and behold, well, and look, just wait to see what happens when they've actually got an offense. Like, obviously, you've got some good pieces, Scary Terry, Antonio Gibson, Chase Young. You sort of think of pieces all over that team. When they kind of get, a good quarterback, and they get a good quarterback, and start to build that offense up a little bit, man.
Yeah,
it's a good young team.
Riverboat Ron talked earlier in the week about him wanting Alex Smith to be the quarterback next year, as I think he's got another year left on that big contract he signed, and that probably you're like from a fantasy point of view, but geez, for Antonio Gibson, that's great news, because that game manager role that Smith plays with the short passing and the leaning on the running back, that's perfect for Antonio Gibson. And he's just, if that's the case again next year, he's going to be touching the first round, you would imagine, in fantasy drafts.
Wow.
But let's just talk about this Washington defense, AJ.
Yeah.
I am all in. I love watching this defense. And, they have not one, not two, not three, not four, 5 first-round picks currently in that rotation. You've got Chase Young, which you've just talked about. You've got Montez Sweat, who
had a pick six.
All the way, pick six again at the end of the game. And we should say Washington again also blew it out to a 41-point win. 41-16. You've also got Jonathan Allen on the interior, who has been fantastic out of Alabama since he was drafted in 2017. And to finish it up, you've got Deron Payne, who's just an absolute monster in the run game. And that's allowed the last but not least first round pick, Ryan Kerrigan, to float around and just be a disruptor. So that defense is just fantastic up front. And
now, did Payne have a fumble recovery or something?
Yeah, so basically Payne knocked out the ball from Zeke, and Jonathan Allen recovered it. So they both got in on the rub there. So but big props to the defensive line coach there in Washington. Do you know who that is?
No idea.
You will never guess who this is. Knocked around both the European League when that was in, and has been a repairman, a bouncer, all sorts. Also the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers for a while. And that's Jim Tomsula. He did all that work.
Get out.
Yeah. So
really?
Basically, well, to be honest with you, he was the defensive line coach there until this season. He basically made that unit into who they are over the last season. He did so well that he then went to Dallas to be their defensive line coach. So today he had to watch his own defensive line that he's built absolutely destroy his current team, which I thought was quite a nice.
Oh my goodness.
So Jim Tomsula, there you go.
Yeah, Hutch is adding in here Tim Settle. Yeah, we saw a bit of Tim Settle as well today. Well, yesterday here in the US, yesterday. A good question here from Matt. Would you give it mid-first for Zeke? Now, Zeke, if anything, if there's ever a buy low window, it might be right now. And that Dallas O-line is obviously massively struggling there. They've, tons of injuries and very depleted. And Zeke obviously is having a terrible year. But I mean, still, Zeke. It's Zeke. I mean, would I give a mid-first for Zeke? Yes, absolutely, 100%. I would definitely do that. I don't think I could get Zeke for a mid-first. I think he's worth a lot more than a mid first, personally.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And I don't know if, I think this question we had as well as part of our, I'm not sure if it is part of your 12, but the question was, I think, I'm just looking at here that we wrote, who do you want at the fantasy Thanksgiving dinner table for next season? Do you want Antonio Gibson or do you want Zeke Elliott? So this kind of ties into to what we're talking about here. So, I mean, on the back of today's performance, a bit of recency bias, you would say Gibson. But, I mean, Zeke has been probably, the most consistent fantasy quarterback since he's coming into the league. So that is a really tough decision. I agree. I think you'd be very lucky to get Zeke for a mid first. And are you going to pick Antonio Gibson in the first round next year?
Ooh, I don't know if you would quite. I mean, if you had Zeke, I don't think you could swap Zeke. Well, no, I don't think you would be wise to swap Zeke for Gibson. And if I was a Gibson owner and someone wanted to swap Zeke for Gibson straight up, I think I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I still think Zeke is worth more than Gibson, but Gibson is, I'm not saying Gibson's not worth a lot, man. He's, I'm just looking quickly at the, I might give you some current figures on the Dynasty Trade Calculator. I'll tell you what they've got. So bear with me for a second as I type. Well, Ezekiel Elliott. So they've got Ezekiel Elliott at 34 points, 34 value. And they've got Antonio Brown. Ugh. Antonio Gibson.
Is he even on there yet?
Well, yeah. Antonio Gibson at 21.
Yeah.
So just over 60% of the value of Zeke. That is just, I'm not saying that's, here or it's just, that is just what currently is in the Dynasty Trade Calculator. So like Antonio Gibson, maybe like a high first, like very high first value, and Zeke probably like a first and a second, high first and a high second ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think well, this is a good point. I'm glad Andrew just brought this up because we were talking. I was just about to talk about how it's been no, surprise that Zeke's run so well behind that offensive line, because that Cowboys offensive line has been, their kind of star unit for a number of years now. But, they lost a few. They lost, I think, was it Frederick last year?
Yes.
With a very, rare sort of condition. Zach Martin went down again today, as I think did their left tackle as well, for a while. So, it's not sort of promising to see that without that offensive line, he's struggling. So, is it Zeke or is it the offensive line, or, are we sort of starting to see the end of that kind of, dynasty around Zeke being a 100-yard rusher every other game?
It's hard, isn't it? There's a bit of chicken and the egg, isn't there? Because you feel a little bit like, well, Zeke has had the benefit of an amazing offensive line for pretty much his whole career.
Yeah.
Yet we know how talented he is, but now we see him behind an absolutely horrid offensive line and he's having a torrid time. So it kind of makes you think, ooh, what's the real measure? Like what is Zeke?
Yeah.
That's a bit meta. So just one G&T down.
I don't think he's going to drop off, like the first round fantasy value. I think he's,
no.
He's going to be there for, he's signed that big contract, hasn't he? And as soon as that gets back as well, I think, you can safely say that, he's going to be in there. But I mean, he's like, just in terms of rushing yards this season, he's currently sixth, with 707 behind Ronald Jones, Josh Jacobs, James Robinson, Dalvin Cook, and Derrick Henry. But But only 5 TDs, which is the lowest of that group. Josh Jacobs 9, Dalvin Cook 13, Derrick Henry 9, and funnily enough, he's only had one rush of 20 yards or more. That's it. So Henry's had 8, Zeke's, Dalvin Cook's had 6. So that's sort of telling as well, isn't it? That his longest rush of the season has been 24 yards.
Oh, yeah. It surprises me that he's that high in the rankings, to be honest. Doesn't feel like he should be.
No, you're probably right. I mean, he has, like you say, he still has had plenty of opportunity. So it's not, it's just like, when you talk about the 5 fumbles as well, that's going to hurt you in terms of fantasy. But yeah, I mean, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4 games 90+ yards. So that's probably where his production's come.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, that was one of our 12 Thanksgiving questions. Let's dive into what was number 1. Well, the second one now. Let's dive into the next one. Feel free to answer this at home. Which player are we, okay, this is our Thanksgiving question, isn't it? Which player are we thankful for in fantasy? You can go first if you like.
Well,
I know your answer, actually. I think I do. Yeah, I think so.
Right. Well, this answer is I've got him in probably over 50% of my leagues, and I just acquired him again today for 2 first-round picks. So I have, and I'm a contender. It's in our super flex league that we've got, AJ.
Oh yeah,
So I'm sitting, I think 8-2 in that league, and I'm very in there, and that's Tyler Lockett. Quite a lot to give up for him. However, I'm pretty solid across the board, and I want to go win this thing this year. And I think I was lacking a little. I lost Cortland Sutton to the IR at the start of the year, so I needed someone, who's going to put up consistent points. So he's the guy this year that has really just catapulted himself into that kind of top 5 receiver conversation, I think, in terms of fantasy. I think him and DK Metcalf are actually in the top 5 fantasy receivers. So, the offense, it's a great situation. The trust there with Russ Wilson is, completely 100% going to stay. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to look past a guy like Tyler Lockett this year because he's probably, wasn't maybe a 3rd, 4th round pick, would you say maybe?
Oh yeah.
And he's putting up incredible wide receiver 1 numbers.
4th, probably
4th. And the good thing about him as well is because DK Metcalf's there and he's the bigger guy, that's where the shutdown corner is going to go every time. So he's always going to find space and he's always going to be used across the formation. So slam dunk for Tyler Lockett for me.
I like that. I thought you were going to say Dalvin Cook. Now, I know that I actually wrote down Kamara and Cook, but it's not a real answer because I don't own any of them.
Oh, really?
So it's not me. It's just if you had drafted Kamara and Cook, then I think you'd be very happy. Obviously, you'd be very, very happy with their fantasy production. But truth be told, I don't own any of them. I just wasn't prepared to pay that price. But if you did pay that price, you're very happy. You're not worried about that whatsoever. But the player that I do have, and I must confess, it's funny. It's the flip of the coin that you just said, is DK Metcalf, because at the beginning of this year, in the redraft leagues that I play, because I wasn't a fan of DK, and I didn't have much stock of DK. And so in the off season, I acquired a couple of shares, and also in my redraft drafts, I picked DK just for the hell of it, just because I was a bit like, I had a feeling. I had a feeling that this was going to be this good. And I didn't own any of him, and it was a bit of a like, well, what the hell? I might as well own some DK because I think that this could be really good. And I do have a tendency, like maybe many of us do, to just kind of do the same thing in every league.
Yeah.
I'll draft, there's players that I like and I'll just pick them like over and over again. And, it's kind of pointless. If I've got like 5 fantasy squads that are almost exactly the same, then it's a bit like, what's the point? Especially if there's some duds, then, you're in trouble. So just for a bit of, because I thought, hey, DK is a guy that I don't really own. I'm just going to go out and actually get some stock in him. And my goodness, has he been fantastic. He's a fantastic pickup, and I'm incredibly thankful because his floor, well, mind you, when I went to have a look, he has had 2 games, I think, which have been down games. But the possibility is that he can win your week, basically, like just about win your week for you. And to have a player like that on your squad is, I think, really valuable. And in one, I'm not sure, are you playing in that starters only? Yep. Now in that, I've got Lockett and DK, and that has been brilliant. And Russ, actually. I've got the stack. I've got Russ, DK, and Lockett, which I did semi-deliberately. And that could have turned out absolutely terribly. But that has been great because like on the down weeks of DK, that's when Lockett has really gone off.
Yeah.
So that's worked out brilliantly.
3 touchdown game, did he, against the Cardinals, where he was just, I mean, even if you have both of them, right? Scored, one of them's, they're either going to score the amount that you both want, or one of them's going to score enough to make up for the other one. So it's like, perfect, really. I think that's a good pick. And I think he's one of those guys, isn't he, that just looks, he might not blow you away with all the, the combine and the stats and,
sure.
everyone has the whole, oh, well, he can't do this and he looks a bit slow at this. But then when you actually get to the NFL, he just looks the part. He just, he manages to find, that extra, he just looks good, when he's on.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked because I nearly said him as well because I've got a lot of him. And players he was taken with the last pick in the 2nd round.
Right.
Players who went before him: Andy Isabella, Paris Campbell, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, McCall Hardman, AJ Brown. Fair enough. We'll probably say that's a good pick. Deebo Samuel, not real. Like he's got injury problems. He's,
Health,
N'Keal Harry.
Oof. Ouch.
Marquise Brown. Verdict's still out. So, I mean, really, if I wouldn't probably take any of those at all, going forward. I mean, AJ Brown, I do own a fair bit of, but I certainly wouldn't trade him straight up for DK. I don't think
it's close. It's pretty close though. So Andrew says DK as well. First year of Dynasty, got him in 2 leagues. Matt says Josh Allen. Man, Josh Allen has been, hasn't he been impressive? And Stephon Diggs, in retrospect, we certainly see free agent signings that just never work. And you think, in retrospect, you think, how could we have thought that worked? Well, Stephon Diggs has been the perfect addition to that Bills offense, the perfect wide receiver for Josh Allen. That's worked out beautifully. Hutch says Patty Mahomes. Yeah, of course. And if you've got a stack, if you've got Patty and Tyreek Hill, I don't have a Tyreek Hill Mahomes. That's expensive. I don't have a stack like that in any league, but I do have in a couple of leagues. I'm lucky to have a Mahomes Edwards-Helaire stack. That works pretty well. Yeah. But that's a beautiful. If you can pair him with Tyreek Hill, whew.
Funnily enough, AJ, in that starters league, I've done really well this year on the back of T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. I'm now absolutely screwed, obviously, but I need to rethink that strategy now that Burrow's gone. But it is sometimes in those kind of high volume passing offenses, in the same way as you would, draft a handcuff running back, a very wise thing to do, I think. Because one guy is obviously going to have a significant lower value than the other.
Yeah. Matt asks, not Herbert. Now, surprisingly, I don't really own any Herbert. I don't know what that's. Well, no, I know what it says about how I felt about Herbert, right?
I think the reaction on Draft Day told us that you wanted a lot of Herbert, AJ.
And get this, and I'd be interested in what your opinion and others' opinion is of this, right? In a Superflex league in which I was pretty healthy at quarterback with Mahomes and Jared Goff, who I'm a big fan of, and who else? I had basically 4 quarterbacks, and I had drafted Justin Herbert because he had fallen in the draft early in the season when Herbert had just started. So he'd had one good performance. I cashed out and I traded him straight up for Derrick Henry, which I'm not sure how I feel about that right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's not set the world alight this year, has he? He's not been the running back of last year.
No.
I mean, he's still the number 3 fantasy running back. But he's kind of, top 3, Kamara 256 fantasy points, Cook 241, and then Derrick Henry 182. So there's a massive drop off, a huge drop off. He's still, I like that trade. I think, like you say, you were nice on quarterbacks. So, I think you're getting a lot of value, but and in
fairness, I needed running back. I only had Edwards-Helaire. That's all.
Yeah.
My other running backs were terrible, and that was an area of need. But now I sort of look at the numbers that Herbert's putting up, and given that I already had Mahomes, if I'd had Mahomes and Herbert as my starting quarterbacks, I think I would be making up for any sort of chump that I'd be starting at running back. But anyway.
Yeah, although Jared Goff has had very good weeks.
He has.
So I think on the balance there, I think you've done the better decision. I think I mentioned last week in that Starters League, I traded for Herbert. I picked him up, but I traded away Lamar Jackson because I knew I was going to get Herbert on the waiver to Kyle. But yeah, and that's worked out great for me. So I'm
hell yeah.
Anybody who's in Herbert this year, I think it'd be interesting to see the range of values because I imagine it's quite a broad spectrum of value over the year. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, let's go to our second question. We'll keep this moving along because it's actually technically our third question. Yeah. Thanksgiving themed. Which pumpkin player do you need to turn into Cinderella for the run home? A pumpkin player you need to turn into Cinderella.
So a guy who's not really done his money's worth so far, and you need him to pick up the game.
Yeah, there's so many choices.
Yeah, it's like, do we only get to pick one? I thought about this a lot because it comes down to running back for me. I was a bit naive early, I think, in some of my redraft leagues. I was kind of hanging on to, I can use someone like James White as a serviceable
yeah
too, and that's just fallen completely off a cliff.
Maybe not now. He might resurgence a bit.
But then you don't really have anyone behind him that you think, I can run with him. But a guy for me who I need to just desperately do something is David Montgomery. I just there's absolutely no reason why he isn't, dominating that backfield.
There's no one else.
Well, exactly. And he's just, I think he's averaged I think less than 3 yards a carry 4 times this season on 10 plus touches. So he's got steady volume, but he's just not doing anything with it. And this is a guy, I think, who, we were talking about some of those sort of 2019 running backs last week. He was a 3rd round pick, so you wouldn't have said, oh well, he's going to be a number 1 rusher and all that kind of stuff. But he did show a lot of promise early, and that's just not gone anywhere. And I think, I sort of had him in a lot of leagues as like that flex guy or that guy who could fill in. But now guys like James White aren't producing. I need somebody else to come and be a solid RB2. I don't think you can say that about David Montgomery right now.
Nope. No, I agree. Matt's put up CMC here. That's a good one for sure. Oh man, and with the state of the Panthers, they've got their bye week in week 13, so it doesn't look likely he's playing this week. Then he's got the bye week 13, and then you wonder if they might just shut him down.
Yeah,
which is like, ugh. A player in redraft who you probably picked at 101.
Yeah,
and ironically, the player I'm gonna select is the player. So in Scott Fish, I am last in my division, but I gave up some time ago. I'm last in my division, and I think because I put the chips in the middle of the table, I did have the 101, and I didn't go with CMC, but I went with the other player who is a pumpkin who I want to turn into Cinderella, and that's Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
And, I mentioned it last week, that I actually traded for Lamar Jackson during the week. So I still believe in Lamar, and I know that regression was on the table because last year was just ridiculous. I don't think anybody expected Lamar to just repeat exactly the same, but I think the real Lamar is just not what we're seeing right now. I think it's between, maybe midway between this, and he's still, I think, even based on his current performance, maybe still QB 11 or 12.
Yeah, 11, I think.
11. So, if that's his floor.
Yeah. I think the thing that has been surprising about, we knew about the maybe he wasn't the best passer in the world, right? No, he's not. He's done all right there, though. He's nearly touched 2,000 yards, 15 TDs to 6 interception ratio. That's all good. Like, it's not, but it's been his use of his legs, hasn't it? That's what's really significantly reduced. And, whereas last year he was, you could count on 50 plus yards and change plus a touchdown. That's just not there anymore. And
no.
with that kind of, J.K. Dobbins roles sort of increasing as the season's gone along, you'd be hard pressed to sort of buy into the level of hype or even a comeback for next year. I think we're seeing kind of still a top 10 guy probably at quarterback. But, but it's all about the price, right? It's all about the price. Like, if you're in a top 10 quarterback, I'm a Jared Goff truther, and you get Jared Goff, significantly many rounds later than Lamar Jackson. Yeah.
So, depends on the price, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And it doesn't look like that development of the passing game is going to happen under the current coaching staff either. So that is something to watch.
Yeah, it's concerning. Andrew's put in here, can I put a team? The Bucs wide receivers have struggled with injuries and inconsistency. Chris Godwin, especially. And, AB, man, I really dislike him personally, but he got targeted some crazy amount by Brady, and that's out of, it's out of your control. And Brady just loves the guy for whatever reason. Obviously really wanted him to come into Tampa. And he's targeted like maybe 14 times, something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Did
we talk last week about with his arrival, who's going to lose touches or something. I think we talked about that, and we were talking about Godwin. We were talking about Scotty Miller and potentially Mike Evans. The one guy we didn't talk about was Gronk, who had been on a tear for 5 or 6 weeks. And then I was looking at it last week, and because I was thinking about adding him in a league where he'd gone on waivers. And since he's arrived, since Brown's arrived, Gronk has just got 5 catches on 15 targets in 4 games, compared to an average of 8.3 targets a game and 50 yards over 4 games in the 4 games before he arrived. So, you can kind of see there that it's actually been Gronk that's the one who suffered the most from Brown being there.
Yeah, I think Godwin had a decent fantasy outing last week. Mike Evans is always going to be, I think, a force. Yeah, it's a pain. And I feel like, and again, it's like, I know this isn't a Ronald Jones question. I've got Ronald Jones. Man, I can't pick the bloody week to play Ronald Jones. I always pick the wrong week. Yeah. And Leonard Fournette doesn't look good. And the thing that I don't understand about Bruce Arians is that he had a finely tuned race car, and then he thought, I'm going to do, he saw something on the internet. I better get this filter and install it into the thing. And he didn't need to. And then it's like he saw something else on the internet. I'll go and get this. And he just keeps adding stuff to his sports car, which was a high performance thing that was winning all the races anyway. And it's like, why did you mess with it?
Yeah. And I think the key thing there is as well, when you've got somebody like Brady, at quarterback, he's been extremely Jekyll and Hyde as well. So, when you did have consistency in the receiving core, but not consistency behind center, and then you've got not consistency on both sides, we've seen the result. So,
Yeah, good point. Just before we move on, Ganley's just brought up, Lamar, the latest news is Lamar Jackson has COVID. I saw this before the news actually dropped. I was getting lots of alerts on my phone today, people picking up RG3. It happened in a number of leagues, and I was like, what? When I saw the first one, I was like, huh. And then I saw the second one, and I was like, hang on. There's a pattern. Completely unrelated leagues. It all happened really fast. And it's like, come on. I don't want a piece of RG3, to be honest, but it's like Superflex, people just look for anything. People were starting Jake Luton. So, let's get on to the next question. Which player, okay, so obviously part of any Thanksgiving is dessert. Which player is your dessert option? You can't resist reaching for him. It means, maybe he could be good. Maybe he's average. I don't know, but you just sort of tend to have him. I've got some easy answers of guys that I tend to have on multiple rosters. But yeah, who's your dessert option?
Easy one for me. And I guess it's become more relevant in the last year, but it's Travis Kelce. I mean, I own him pretty much everywhere.
A sweet tooth.
Yeah. And, in normal circumstances, anybody overpaying for a tight end should be swiftly removed from the fantasy. He's simply not a tight end. He's an absolute, beast. In the receiving game. He arguably, him and Hill are both. We talked about the 2 receivers in Seattle, but they're both wide receiver 1. I think Kelce would be the wide receiver 5. I think he is.
Wow.
If you think of that from that point of view. And I know there was that kind of talk last year about Kelce or Kittle, and there was a lot of, you saw sort of towards the end of the first round, but probably more in that second round, early second. who would go first and who would, go for that. Well, I mean, if you look at where Michael Thomas went in the drafts, fantasy drafts last year, people you wouldn't have bought a mid-first round for Michael Thomas. Well, I mean, Travis Kelce's certainly in that mix for next year, I think. I mean, there's no sign of him slowing down whatsoever. And I did definitely, particularly in redraft, use my, where I was at the end of the first round. I certainly reached and took Kelce, and I'm eating the cake and enjoying it right now, I'll tell you.
Hell yeah. And there's no doubt you get a specific advantage with having a player like Kelce. I mean, okay, so with Kittle on IR, and I'm a big fan of Kittle, but obviously with Kittle out of the picture, well, the next closest is Waller. And I think Waller is, like, certainly you've got a tier break between Kittle and, with Kelce and Waller. And then there's another tier break after Waller, I think. But the tier break between Kelce and Waller is pretty big.
I think it's like 50 odd points, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
He's in a different league, and I think that's the thing, is that there's just, for me, you sort of have to take a risk somewhere. If you're going to go out and try win your league, you're going to have to take a bit of a risk. And I think I'm very happy in taking that risk early with Kelce. And certainly you're going to trump me with your answer, I'm sure, AJ. But
I doubt it. But so obviously, so Andrew here says Kittle. I'm a big fan of Kittle too. And Ganley says Tyler Lockett. Yeah, I love that as well. That's fantastic, and he's so underrated still. Yeah. It's hard to believe. Maybe he's turned the corner a little bit this year. I don't know, but still seems to be incredibly underrated. But the player, well, I put two down. They're on the same team, and I kind of like, you know what? I've become a bit of a fan of the stack. I never used to really care about stacking players, but Cooper Kupp is a guy I've gone after, like gone early-ish for, and gone after in a lot of leagues, traded for him in some leagues. He is just, I mean, he's a possession machine. He's just unbelievable. And the other one is Jared Goff, who just seems to have a terrible reputation. And, to be honest, maybe he is really just an average quarterback. I mean, I think he's people throw the word around like it's a swear word. They say system quarterback. Maybe he is. I don't really care. I mean, I like the guy. I think that he's pretty efficient and he's good. And in leagues where I've got several leagues where I've got Goff and Kupp, or Goff and Kupp and Woods, and that works extremely well.
Yeah, I own a fair bit of Goff as well, and I think, I mean, there's two things with Goff. I mean, he's a boring guy. Like if you watched, Hard Knocks, man, that was a tough watch with kind of like, smarmy, dry humor that wasn't really funny.
Right.
And also, there's all the stigma around how much the Rams gave up for him to go.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
One. And then he had the lost Jeff Fisher years, which like could have ruined him, to be honest. Like, he really could have ruined him, and he has pulled it back to a point where I mean, he got to a Super Bowl, and he's been there and he's got a taste for it. And certainly I think you're seeing this year, after what was a down year last year, the Rams look as good as anyone in the NFC to come through and maybe get to the Super Bowl again. I mean, they've got that dynamic young rushing attack. Darrell Henderson come along. Cam Akers finally showed up last week as well. Yes. And like you say, that receiving core of Kupp, Bobby Trees, as some people call him, which I think is a nice nickname for Robert Woods. But
Van Jefferson got a touchdown last week.
Josh Reynolds is a good piece. When you're thinking about wide receivers 3 and 4, and then the 2 tight ends, Higbee and Everett. All of those guys on their day can produce.
Yep.
So I think that's a nice pick. I like Goff because I saw Goff, not get drafted as a starter in a lot of redrafts league last year.
Right.
So,
oh yeah.
Like that's a great bit of cake.
And in Superflex as a quarterback too, I've got no qualms with Goff.
Yeah.
At all. Let's keep things moving. So next question, this is question number 5. Which matchup has you tied to the sofa? Which is your can't miss game for week 12? I think in ways the obvious one was the one that we didn't see.
Yeah, we're going to be sat on the sofa for a long time, I think, waiting for that to start. Probably till Wednesday even, maybe. I don't know if they'll move that game back again. I'm not sure. I think it's meant to be on Monday, but
I'm sorry that this is like we won't go down the rabbit hole too far, but I think the NFL have really messed up because early in the season they were very quick to move games. And then we have had some teams that have really struggled, like the 49ers come to mind. The Raiders, they had almost their whole defense affected. Well, not their whole. That's an exaggeration. A lot of players on their defense affected, and the NFL seemed to be taking this attitude of like, best man up. You just play it. We're just pushing through. And now this happens, and they move the game. It's like pick a strategy. Like what is your actual strategy? It feels a bit unfair. I sort of feel like if I was in the Niners or Raiders organizations, I would be sort of jumping up and down and saying, hang on a second, you could have delayed our games.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like
that
even playing field.
That Niners one in particular, didn't they all then test false positive the day after? So they were all. Yeah, so they I think there was like 5 of them, that then couldn't play because it was a Thursday night game, wasn't it, against the Packers?
Yeah.
So they were a short week. So then they didn't move the game, and then on the Friday it all turned out there was 2 false positives. So like all those, could have played on the Sunday if the game would have been moved back anyway.
And they got absolutely killed.
Yeah. Look, I think going back to the question though, that it was an easy one for me. We've talked about both these guys already, but. Let's go up to Orchard Park and watch Josh Allen take on Justin Herbert. That just sounds great. And both receiving cores, like we've talked about, are fantastic. I mean, Mike Williams is a guy that's really shown up this year as a not just a kind of deep ball threat, but all over the field. And both those defenses have got talent, but haven't quite shown that they can stop the opposition. So I've got a feeling that could be 60 points in that game, and it could go pretty well for a viewing spectacle.
And I sort of feel like Justin Herbert is a quarterback in the style of Josh Allen.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love the fact that we get to see them on the same park, facing off.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
I think last year was the year of kind of, the rushing quarterback and the, you had the Ravens doing all their things. You had the Niners with all, not the quarterback, but all their, running backs almost pretty much acting like, your Lamar Jacksons. And this year it seems to be, let's get back to the old, gunslinger type, air it out guy who's going to, see the spectacular catches in the corner and stuff, which, I've got a lot of appreciation for the way that guys like Kyle Shanahan can do a lot with a little in terms of his running game. But give me, the 30, 40 yard passes, the ball downfield, every week. I think we all, that when they talk about it in football, like soccer, quite a lot, playing the game the right way.
Right.
And I think that both these teams look to do that, I think. And they're both tough. They're both tough teams, I think. They both, go out to win every game.
Yep. I feel a little bit like Ravens Steelers is kind of the obvious one. Still looking forward to seeing that if it happens. And the other one that sort of jumped out to me was Chiefs and Bucks.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I sort of feel like Brady. Well, Brady is still the kind of guy that rises to a challenge, but I feel a little bit like obviously he's a bit up and down. And I don't want to say the end is nigh because, man, how many times have we said that? I don't want to say it.
Well, I think the thing that strikes me about that game, AJ, is that it's kind of a must-win for the Bucks. I mean, they sort of started off really well in the NFC South, but the Saints have just been, fantastic since Breeze and went down as well. But they've won 7 on the bounce, the Saints, and they don't look like anybody can stop them. The Bucks really need to win that to keep pace. So lots to play for there. Whereas the Chiefs, well, they're the Chiefs.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's keep moving. Question 6. Which team has you reaching for the alcohol? You can't watch them. And there's quite a lot of these that you would never watch if not for fantasy. And that's certainly true, unless you're a fan of the team. Even then, you might not watch them.
Well, I mean, I'm lucky I'm still standing up after watching the Lions today. I could have quite easily polished off a bottle of something. Watching that, it was pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with the games remaining, I mean, I'm not, the Jets is the obvious one, obviously.
Yeah.
But I really, one team, and I haven't watched them a lot this year. Like I've watched the condensed game, but I haven't really watched, anything more than that. It's just the Broncos.
Oh, really?
I'm not really bought in on Drew Lock. I think I see him scrambling around a lot trying to make a play, which is, a very rookie thing still. But he doesn't seem like he's gonna, like, they talk about the Dalton line. I don't think he's anywhere going above that at all.
No.
And I don't know, I like Philip Lindsay, but I can't stand Melvin Gordon. And without Cortland Sutton there, who I absolutely love, they're just a tough watch. They're just a tough watch. They don't really inspire. A bit like John Elway. They're just a bit like,
they're a quarterback away, aren't they? And it's like if they look, obviously Elway cannot draft a quarterback. Not that it's necessarily up to Elway. Whatever's happening in that organization, they cannot scout and draft a quarterback to save themselves. They need to just go and buy one. Go and get Dak. Throw the money, open the checkbook, go and get Dak in there. I mean, they've got the pieces on offense. Judy and Sutton, healthy Sutton, Judy and Sutton, Fant. As Melvin Gordon, I'm no fan of, but Philip Lindsay, I'm a fan of.
But the other thing, AJ, is you thought, this offense, well, at least the defense is like lights out.
Yeah.
Von Miller's not there. He's on IR. Bradley Chubb's great, and I love watching him. Justin Simmons is a guy who's been fantastic this year.
Yes.
Just one of those safeties that's up there with just makes plays, bit of a ball hawk all over the field. So, yeah, but man, just a tough watch.
Yeah, Hutch is saying here for the talent, he finds the Browns a tough watch. The only reason I'm watching the Browns is at the moment just for the running game, which is not necessarily a good reason to watch them. And the other ones, apart from the Jets, which I thought was an obvious one, New England and the Jags. Yes, I know I'm picking the worst teams, but they're also just horrible to watch. Unless I've got particular fantasy stake in those games, I'm not really watching them. I'm watching highlights and stuff, but okay, let's keep going. So the question 7, the best cook in the kitchen. the coach of the season so far. Again, I think this might be actually easy.
Well, go on then, AJ. You can kick us off.
All right. Because you know what? I didn't reach for any of the obvious ones because, like, you could pick, like Andy Reid. Like, obviously the Chiefs are doing well, but we expect them to do well. Yeah. I'm a fan of Andy Reid as a coach, but I don't think that's really any reason to say give him the best cook award. I went for Brian Flores.
Yeah, I mean, you can't disagree with that. So, some people would argue that he deserved a bit more recognition last year. I mean, with that,
sure,
they were getting guys off the street and just pretty much rolling through people and trying to find a way. And they were great the second half of the year, a great watch.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, Brian Flores has just been a revelation, I think, and it's very these days you kind of don't see the defensive side, like the head coach really excel like it usually, like that they're not the ones that get the headlines and get all the attention. So that's been kind of refreshing to see that. And I think the thing that we need to mention is having the balls to bench Ryan Fitzpatrick when he did and start Tua, because Fitzpatrick had been fantastic up to that point and had really, even last year galvanized that team, and even as a leader, that's a tough decision for a coach to make. I mean, I feel like that plays into it as well.
I'm a little bit in two minds about that. Like, again, and we had Tua benched in this last game and Fitzpatrick put back in. Look, I'm a bit in two minds about that. It almost made me change my mind because I felt a little bit like, yes, it was brave, but it felt like a plan that they'd had from day one, and it felt like he stuck to it. Whereas I think, to be a good leader, sometimes you have to say, well, this was our intention, but listen, I'm going to change the plan because we're having this success. So it was brave. It was certainly very brave. And, they certainly recognize, Fitzpatrick's not the future. So it was ballsy. There's no doubt. But I've totally been a fan of almost everything they've done. Apart from that, I had mixed feelings about, but yeah. Matt says here, Bill O'Brien. Yeah, that's an interesting pick. He burnt the kitchen to the ground, I think, personally.
Absolutely.
Andrew is adding here, the Dolphins with 2 firsts and 2 seconds next year. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is...
Mainly thanks to Bill O'Brien, actually. So,
yeah, good segue. Yeah. The gift that keeps on giving. He's just like Santa Claus. Question 8. Which team is going to die like the Pilgrims as the Indians run rampage?
Yeah. I think this was sent in by Neil, wasn't it? And has that kind of flair for the Scottish Braveheart type. Well, fair enough, Neil. Good question. I mean, I want to talk about the Lions again because I think they're just horrendous and seem to be going absolutely nowhere. But a team that looked like they're kind of on the chopping block is the Patriots. I mean, they seem to have lost all identity since Brady has left. Even the defense, which over the last few years has got a bit thinner and thinner, has still managed to be very productive. But there's just no reason to believe in the Patriots at the minute. And I thought it very, very strange for Belichick to come out and say that they'd sold out and that they were now paying for it. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, everybody still has a first round pick and a second round pick and a third round pick and a salary cap. So Yeah, that just seemed like a bit of a cop out, really. And even going into, we talked about, I think, N'Keal Harry earlier as a first round pick. They also picked Sony Michel as a first round pick. And it just, the future is not bright. And they also, who's going to be the quarterback next year?
Oh, yeah. Who knows? I said the Jags. Now the Jags play the Browns. And they've got Mike Glennon starting, haven't they?
Yeah, they have.
Like what? What I wrote down was, bear with me for a second. The Jags, the 28th best defense, is going to try to stop the league's third best rushing attack. They're just literally going to get run over.
Yeah.
So,
I think they're also really thin at cornerback as well. I think that CJ Henderson, who we talked about, I think a few weeks ago, who did a pretty decent job on Devontae Adams, he's gone on to IR. So they're completely decimated across the secondary as well.
Yes.
And funnily enough, I forgot to mention with mine, it was the exact same reason as you, AJ. The Patriots have got the Cardinals, and Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds look like they are just going to absolutely run over that Patriots defense, and it could get ugly there in Foxborough, which doesn't happen that often.
Yep. Question number 9: which team is going to run around like turkeys? I think it's a logical one, and maybe we can just skip it. No, I mean, it could be the Jags, but yeah, I think it's a more obvious one.
I think the Jets have looked completely hopeless, like just completely hopeless. And when you look at the sideline and you see Greg Williams stood next to Adam Gase as if they're taking it all seriously, it just makes me laugh. I just don't get it. Like, do they think that this is like, why are they so calm? Why do they seem so accepting of such, misery? It's just
Oh my goodness. Let's keep going. Question number 10: which team is as confusing as the Americans' fascination with yams? So who's the yams of the NFL right now?
I've eaten yams before.
Have you?
But I don't think I knew I was eating it. You know what I mean? It was like, it just looked like a beige thing. I don't know what it was. It was like I was like, oh, what's this? And it was, like how the certain place, I think it was in like a Miami resort, and it was just like a thing. And there's just stacks of, it looks like a gelato counter, but it's actually sweet potato and, all this stuff. It's weird. But, I really struggle to find any kind of love or affinity or, like connection at all. With the Texans, I just, I love Deshaun Watson, but like, I just, from top to bottom, I don't really understand what they stand for, like what they're trying to be. I just, like how teams are quite clearly generally committed to something. And
yes,
the Niners had all those years of being pretty bad post Kaepernick, and then like they sort of said, right, we're going to sign Shanahan and Lynch to a 7-year contract or something, and this is what it's going to be. And you sort of think, right, okay, love it or hate it, you can understand it and you can see it and you can sort of follow it. The inexcusable reason for keeping Bill O'Brien there for so long, then also making him the GM, then like it just looked like it just looked like apathy. It looked like, you know, somebody, maybe, you know, like the lady owner of the Cleveland Indians in Major League, where she's like trying to tank the team without them knowing. Like it felt like maybe that was the case or something like that. But
Right.
yeah, just Texans. Somebody explain to me why I should be interested.
Well, the Bengals are a bit like that as well. But yeah, I went for the Eagles. I think I kind of like your one because it sort of goes with that whole question of yams. Like you just don't know, like what are the Texans exactly?
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like I don't know, like the Eagles are certainly not a good football team. And I'm undecided about Carson Wentz. I mean, I have Carson Wentz in a couple of leagues.
Yeah.
From a fantasy perspective, he's been sort of okay. I think he's better than we're seeing. The receivers, you know, awful. Travis Fulgham probably, and he sort of disappeared the last 2 weeks. And Miles Sanders, I think I'm a fan of, but we haven't really seen the best of him. And Dallas Goddard is great. I think Ertz is coming back.
Should be back.
It's really a team I can't get a handle on, but they can't really get a handle on themselves either, really.
And it's almost perfect that they won the Super Bowl, you know, with a backup quarterback who wasn't, you know, like it kind of was, you know, it tells you that, we won a Super Bowl. Wow, look how did we do that? And we have no idea. Like it seems like that is exactly the case, and it was just one of those kind of runs. I mean, their defense played a huge part in it, obviously, but you know, yeah. I mean, you struggle to understand maybe where they're going as well.
Yeah, Matt says here that the Cowboys. That's a fair call as well. I mean, Jerry clearly wanted to have his big three. He didn't seem that committed to it because otherwise, why wouldn't he have, you know, locked Dak up? But anyway, you know, he sort of wanted, certainly with the arrival of CeeDee Lamb, I think sort of CeeDee Lamb, Zeke, and Dak as his big three. So you extend your running back, who's massive, whatever you think, massive. Certainly, we're seeing, you know, was getting some benefit from that O-line, and you don't pay your quarterback. Yeah. Okay, question 11. Oh, actually, yes. Question 11. We've already done that. I've got a question here. Who do you want at your fantasy dinner table, Antonio Gibson or Zeke Elliott? We've done that one. Who had a worse Thanksgiving, Lamar Jackson or the Dallas Cowboys? I think we write this question before the game had been postponed. I mean, look, regardless, Lamar's got COVID, so you can say who had it worse. Would you rather be the Dallas Cowboys or have COVID?
Well, I mean, what's the deal over there? Like, do they have to isolate and all that sort of stuff? Like,
well, I think so. Yeah, I don't think that. I mean, the impression that I get. And certainly what we've been through in this country, and certainly specifically Melbourne, because I think a lot of Australia has not been through what Melbourne's been through or Victoria's been through. It's like, man, suck it up. Like we're down to 0 now.
Yeah.
So you know what? America, and you know, if you're listening to this and you're from the States, don't take this personally. But at some point you've got to bloody suck it up and just do what you need to do. Because like all the people, who knows what we're going to see out of Thanksgiving with people going and just, I feel like they kind of are like, well, oh yeah, we have to adjust because there's a pandemic, but we're not going to give away any of our freedom. We're not going to give away any of our pleasure, any of the things that we do. We're going to keep all those, right? So it's like, they don't want to make any accommodation.
Well, this is what I mean. Like, I don't, what? Because I noticed there's quite a few, like, where they've said, "Oh, he's going on COVID IR because of close contacts." I was like, well, what did they? So what happens? Do they shut the facility because they're like, "All right, somebody's tested positive. We're going to shut the facility." So do they all ring each other up and say, "Do you want to come play PlayStation at mine instead?" Like, is that what happens? Because why would they then sort of say, "Oh, he's gone on IR because he's close contact with this other player"?
Yeah.
Like, I imagine it's maybe they live together or they whatever it might be, which I know a lot of those guys do have sort of apartments next to each other and stuff. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I feel like the Cowboys did have a worse Thanksgiving. I think
it was atrocious. You just saw shots of Jerry in the stands.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this must be so horrible. Like he certainly, because they kept putting him on the camera every time something happened. And I felt like, man, at what point would you just get up from your seat and just go to the back of the booth and just have a nice big drink? Like, he sat there and he seemed to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, give him credit for that. I think Jed York of the Niners earlier in the season, when they got blown out by Miami, I think he left at halftime. somebody caught him like leaving in his limo, which fair enough. But yeah, I feel like the big thing there, I think, is this is what. So they decided not to keep Jason Garrett, which was probably the right decision. Yeah,
right.
So then, it's now his decision to bring in the next guy, and the team that they brought in has pretty much been a disaster. I mean, we talked about the decision making today from Mike McCarthy on those ball fouls, the fake punts. Do you know what I mean? So and it happens in prime time on Thanksgiving. I mean, Jerry's not going to be thrilled with that. He's going to be checking his messages and not being happy with some of the stuff he's seeing. I imagine he's getting a bit of stick. So,
yeah. Hutch says here, as a Washington fan, give me 10 doses of COVID over the Cowboys. Man, if you're a Cowboys fan, it must be a hard watch right now.
Yeah.
Matt says at least they have pick 3 or 4 next year. It was that year the year that they got Zeke was that the year that Romo was out? I'm just trying to think. They had someone go out and then they had that down year and they picked Zeke up. So sometimes these things can be a bit of a blessing. You get to pick a top tier player at least. Yeah. Yes, Jerry would love Sean Payton, and Mike McCarthy is, oh my God, he's a joke. He's terrible. It was a controversial hire, there's no doubt. And it's just seemingly, turned out the way I think all the naysayers said. It's really just been awful.
And I mean, even before Dak went down, I mean, he actually pulled them back in like miraculous fashion in like 2 or 3 games. It could be a lot worse. Like they could be, maybe 1 or 2 wins if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is our last question. Who needs a new family? We sort of alluded to this before. Who needs new family out of Matthew Stafford or Matt Patricia? It's again a coach-related question. Oh, Matt Patricia. Hoo-wee. I mean, it's fair to say he's on the hot seat. It's getting pretty hot, I would say.
I'd argue Matt Stafford is equally as hot, though. I mean, he's been there for a long time now there in Detroit. And, you kind of feel like, even though, they, like you say, they added DeAndre Swift, the defense has been a problem for a number of years. That's not been solved. But I mean, those receivers, like when they are fit, Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones is a guy who always, turns up. TJ Hawkinson's,
Yep.
useful. I feel like there's not many excuses left for Matt Stafford in Detroit, and it may be just a change of scenery is the way,
Yeah.
I always think about Matt Stafford in that kind of same mold as Derek Carr, like that kind of, does some good things, seems impeded by either a bit of naivety or not much progression. We're seeing some progression from Carr under Gruden, and that's been good to see. Certainly made them more exciting to watch, but Stafford's just gone nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. My first thought is Matt Patricia. I think he's been terrible. But yeah, I don't know. I'm in two minds. I think I can see Matt Stafford might be the one to go. You can't, as you said, when you put it all on the table like that, when you sort of say Kenny Galladay, Marvin Jones is pretty underrated. He's pretty good. TJ Hawkinson, who's fantastic. Swift coming on, although, it hasn't been a great year in terms of their health across the board.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't give you many excuses then.
No. Yeah, you could argue that Patricia's probably working with a lesser unit than Stafford is, but saying that, it seems to be the New England retirement home on the defensive side of the ball. They've paid a lot of guys or expected them to come in and do, a lot, like with not much around them. So yeah, I think you probably both need a new family, right?
Yeah, I saw. Actually, I think he had a good day, but I saw Jamie Collins popping up on the stat sheet a lot.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, Jamie Collins, really, Matt? It feels lazy. Look, I know, when coaches pick players from their previous teams, and I know a lot about that player. You've got experience, but it feels a bit lazy.
Yeah,
Patricia seems to have leaned on that a lot.
Yeah, particularly when they're players that you think, okay.
Yeah, that's about right. And that's it. We've gotten to the end of our 12 questions of not Christmas, Thanksgiving. 12 questions of Thanksgiving. And that was a lot of fun. Unlike the Thanksgiving games, unfortunately. But yeah, very good. Very good. I've enjoyed that. And we will just have to wait and see what happens with Ravens Steelers, whether that game gets played. There's not much.
I see implications really for that one. I mean, a lot of teams, this is the week where, are you 5-6 or are you 6-5? Are you chasing sort of playoff? And I imagine, pretty much the whole, Steelers receiving core is probably
rostered,
floating around in people's flexes and wide receiver twos and stuff.
Hell yeah!
So yeah, I guess in a way though, if they wait to even Wednesday to play the game or whatever Tuesday, when do you make those decisions about whether you start them or not?
I know. Well, that's just the season. Look, we've been very lucky. We have really been very lucky. It has felt pretty normal for the most part. We've hardly had, in the early stages when we had that first, what was it? It was the Titans. I can't remember who else it was. That game that got moved.
Oh, yeah. Was it the Bills?
Could have been. Yeah. Could have been. And there was another game that kind of just got moved back. And it sort of felt like, this is going to get a bit ugly. And then it's been relatively plain sailing. And I feel like, certainly the situation in the States with COVID is not getting better. So, it has felt a little bit like the NFL's aim has just been like next man up. We're just going to play. We'll just push through. We're not going to kind of mess with this. We might be reaching a tipping point soon, or maybe even already. We've basically, look, touch wood, we've got through almost the whole fantasy regular season and then the playoffs, and we've had it relatively unaffected.
Does that make it acceptable, though, to not take action? Do you know what I mean? Like, we're so close to the end, so why don't we just...
Oh, no, it doesn't at all. I don't agree with it. No, I certainly don't agree with it. But I'm thankful for it in ways, because at least it's been a relatively normal season for us, apart from injuries and things. But, certainly the depth of rosters have been tested, I would say, at times. And this could be one of those times. And as you said, like, we're very close. Fantasy playoffs are going to begin sort of around week 14, typically. Let me just add this in here. What Matt Patricia named safest hire of new 2018 coaches.
It literally just popped up on my Twitter while we were talking about it, as if they were listening to us. So look at that, SB Nation playing it safe with Patricia.
Man, that hasn't aged well.
No, not at all.
Well, listen, on that note, let's wrap it up. Good luck, everybody, with your push for the fantasy playoffs. I mean, if you're lucky enough to be in, that's fantastic. Maybe you're sort of pushing for a bye. You might be pushing for that last sort of, that 5th or 6th spot in the fantasy playoffs, but like week 12, week 13 is pretty critical. And obviously next week we've got Carolina and Tampa on bye, which is also, that's the timing of that isn't great. But, this is the push for the fantasy playoffs, and we're almost there. So thank you very much for tuning in. Appreciate you listening. And thanks, Ben, for joining me, riding shotgun, filling G's shoes.
I enjoyed it immensely, AJ. You're a great topic. And, Thanksgiving's always... and we should give thanks for G. He does bring us a lot of entertainment through various channels through the week anyway. But just for him, we'll just remind the public, to start anyone. So we can't not mention that this week.
I was reminded of it popped up on, I don't know why I watched this. It might have been on Netflix or Amazon Prime, but there was like this Lano and Woodley. I don't know if you're a fan of Lano and Woodley. They had come back together. This is still like maybe 5 years ago, but they had come back to do like this reunion tour sort of thing. And I was watching it and thinking the beauty of that was how different they are. And I think, I'm very much the straight man to G's, wild man.
Hence his whereabouts unknown tonight.
Yeah, that's right. I'm the Lano to his Woodley, or vice versa. I don't know which is which, really, in your mind or my mind. But yeah, do appreciate you, G, and hope you probably will listen to this because he's not on it. He usually doesn't listen. He doesn't like the sound of his own voice, so he probably will tune into this. So yeah, cheers, Hutch. Yeah, we better get back to work, hey, man. Yeah, we better probably get to bed or something or similar. I might have another G&T. So thanks, everyone. Enjoy your weekend and good luck with your fantasy matchups this week. And on behalf of Ben and myself, catch you later. Or have a week, or whatever I usually say. I forget. See you, everyone.
Doing so well, AJ.
I know. I messed it right at the end. Okay.